This should be a definite draw now, with his king being that close. Okay, Red Blossom is our next opponent, 1888. I'm going to play d4 in this game. Plays d6. And let's play knight f3. So sticking in d-pawn territory rather than going into a Pirtz with e4. Knight f6. I'll play c4. So I'm playing like my semi-usual repertoire. Knight c3. And we're going to have a King's Indian. Bishop e2. I'll castle. And let's play bishop e3 here. d5 is another move, but this is also fine, just reinforcing the center. Again, I don't expect to win too many games, honestly, based on better openings. Although title players do tend to have better openings. I'm still going by this theory that I've seen to be true in my own experience, that players at this level are weaker in positional play and endgames. So I want to force this guy to make strategic decisions. It's going to be harder in a sharper opening like this. He's pausing to think a little bit. Okay, bishop d7 seems unusual to me. So this knight's kind of hanging out on g4. I can try to play h3 and push it away. h3, he'll play knight h6. I can take on e5 and then maybe install the knight on d5. Seems like a good plan. I could also put the knight up to d5 right away. So h3, knight h6. Say I take on e5. He'll probably take with the pawn. Knight d5. Looks like a very annoying knight for him to deal with. Let's try that. So back that piece off and then take. Relieving the tension. I like that he can't take with the f-pawn. He would lose his queen if he did that. Okay, so he takes this way, and now knight d5. d4 is a weak square for me, so I want to make sure he can't utilize that square in the future. Just attacking our bishop. Let's back that off. Now maybe queen b3, attacking the pawn on b7 and preparing rook f d1. Let's do that. Always good to develop your queen with tempo in kind of a late opening, early middle game stage. Because now this rook is going to get over here real fast. And I'm using this rook because if I'd use the a rook, then my f1 rook might be boxed in. So I like using this one. This one can come to c1 and maybe assist with c5. So now this is going to make him nervous, having his queen lined up with my rook. There's tactical opportunities already, like knight takes b6. You can't play queen e8 because a knight takes c7. You could try queen c8. Although queen c8, he might be opening himself up for moves like queen b5, trying to get the knight to move so knight e7 is working. Because that knight would be the only thing guarding that square. So I'm just trying to think on my opponent's time right here. Plays that, maybe queen a3. Queen a3 looking at knight e7. Bold move, this one, but maybe not bad. Okay, let's come here. So knight e7 is on the table. And he just blundered it. Check. Win the queen. Yeah, he completely missed that move. Maybe c5 would have been better. That way knight e7 is not possible. I play queen takes. So, yeah, just a calculation mistake. Which I shouldn't give the impression that players at this level are not going to blunder. Because, as I said in the very first Climbing the Ladder video, you're going to see blunders at every level as we climb the ladder. Especially in Blitz. But yeah, this was a pretty big one, allowing knight e7 and king moves, and I'm going to win that queen. So I just played pretty straightforward in this one, just trading on e5 and then jumping the knight into d5. It's possible there are better plans, but it looked like a good outpost square, and I like the fact that it's hard for him to use the d4 square. He can't exactly leap into that square right away because I have my knight and my queen, both participating in the defense of that square. Switching back to the analysis board while we wait for our next game. So we were looking at this ending. An ironclad fortress in rook endings where you're fighting against a rook pawn. A fortress that's very good to know is one in which you have your king like this and your rook on the same file as the king. So the defensive king on a square opposing the opponent's king or on the immediate adjacent square right here, and the rook on the file. Because with this fortress, even though black has complete command of the h and the g files, there's nothing black can do to win, and white will just play their rook or even their king back and forth along the file, because black needs to be able to get the king out in order to win, but they just can't engineer that scenario. You know, check, king here, king still can't move, check again, white's going to go here. At all times, the white king can stay guarding those two squares. And this rook is helpful on this file because it prevents a check from the f file to attempt to force the king away. All right, let's see who's up next. Who wants a piece of Finn's? Who wants my rating? The Real Cuckoo Head, 1885. He opens with the bird, f4. I'm going to play d5 because the bird is just a reverse Dutch. And when you're facing unusual openings, I think it's good to be straightforward. I know how to play the Dutch from the white side, and fianchettoing your kingside bishop is a good idea in that line, so I'm going to do it from this side as well. Let's just play knight f6. So this is like a reversed Leningrad Dutch now. c5. And I think preparing an early d4 is pretty smart against this line, so I'm going to do that. Knight a4, tricky. Okay, so he's going after this pawn in an unusual way. Putting the knight on the rim. I can't play b5. I would just lose that pawn, so probably queen d6 or queen c7. Somehow queen d6 looks correct to me. Let's do that. So develop the queen and defend this, looking to play knight c6 in the future. He plays c4, not unexpected because he wants to rule out a future b5. So let's do knight c6, just develop. A lot of times in this opening, white suffers with a weak e3 square, so maybe he's trying to rectify that with his last move. Let's take, even though he gets to play bishop takes with a gain of time on this, I think I can play b6. b6, knight e5, bishop, let's say, to b7. And it looks reasonable. I think I'll be able to defend and hold out on that c6 square. So let's do that. Note after knight e5, I cannot take his knight because my rook in the corner is going to be lost. After knight e5, bishop d7 also makes sense. It's kind of a close call between bishop d7 and bishop b7. Interesting. So he's bringing the knight back. Maybe he's looking to play knight e4. That would make sense. Nonetheless, I like our position already. If knight e4, I mean, I could trade and try to win the b2 pawn. That looks pretty good. Like knight e4, knight takes e4, d takes e4, bishop takes b2. I could also try to bring my queen back to c7. He's probably preparing b4 with that last move. Rook f d8 looks good. Attacking that pawn. This is a backward pawn. It's extremely vulnerable. So I think I'd like to go after it. I'm just debating between rook f d8 and rook a d8. I think I like rook f d8 a little bit more. Let's keep this rook guarding the a pawn for now. This is kind of a similar rook issue to the last game, which rook to move to a central file. Yep, knight e5. Maybe here rook b8. Rook b8 though, I could run afoul of knight b5. I gotta be careful. Queen c7 looks pretty standard in order to defend this bishop and thereby threaten to take on e5. I'm not sure it's a huge threat though. Maybe a6. Maybe I should play a6 in an effort to rule out knight b5 completely. He could be trying to come at me with b4 though. Knight d7, knight b5. Yeah, I don't like where my queen is having to go after that. If I take on e5, that's actually kind of interesting. Knight takes e5. If f takes e5, I have queen takes e5, and I'm on his bishop. So if bishop takes b7, I have queen takes e3 check. Also on knight takes e5, if he plays bishop takes b7, I can maybe play just rook b8 thereafter. And once again, same thing. If he takes, I take with the queen. He has bishop e4, though. Bishop e4. Okay, let's play this safe. We'll just play a move that rules out knight b5. So right now I'm just trying to get a handle on his short-term activity so that when exchanges do happen, I can go about attacking his d3 pawn again. Knight e4, does that work? So knight e4, I take it. He takes with the bishop. e5 is still vulnerable. I still think he's going to have issues there. If I take, he's certainly not going to want to take with a pawn because then he's blocking that bishop of his. All right, so let's do this. Looks to me like he's sacrificing a pawn. If bishop takes e4, I can do bishop takes e5. Oh no, he's playing this little in-between move. Well, this also seems to lose a pawn, though, because remember, b2 is loose. By virtue of having moved that knight from c3, he's giving me a shot at that b2 pawn. So I'm going to take with the queen, or sorry, with the bishop. Let's see which way he recaptures with the pawn. Now here I've got a couple options. The b pawn is loose, but he's always going to be able to play rook b1 and try to get on the file. So I'm considering queen e6 as well, like queen moves that will attack his weak pawns. I do see on queen e6 he has queen c2, however. Maybe we can move our queen back, queen c7. He moves his queen, and then we can play the bishop into d4. That seems like a good option as well. How about queen e6, queen c2, bishop d4? Trying to swap those dark square bishops, get our rook into a dominating square, and then he's going to have trouble on e4 and c4 all the same. Yeah, that seems simple. I'm not sure about bishop takes b2. He's got a big time advantage, so I'm just going to play it this way and look to simplify, as is consistent with my game plan against these players. I'm heading for an endgame that looks pretty comfortable for me. Now I get in on this nice d4 square, attacking c4, and I'm preparing to double up my rooks with tempo. That's weakening. I can actually just take that pawn, because he can't recapture, he hangs his rook. Also, I can simply take c4. Which to do? I think I'm just going to take c4, though. Easier. Because if I took on f5, maybe he could double up his rooks and thereby threaten to do a discovered attack. This way, he still keeps kind of sketchy pawns. Yeah, f5, lashing out. I'm not sure he wants to do that. Okay, now e4 is hanging once again. Any drawback to taking there? Maybe. Maybe I should do this first. Yeah, let's exercise a little patience. Maybe go rook d2 in the future. So if rook f1, I can play rook d2. Rook f1, he might want to play to try to create threats down the f-file. Rook c3 is possible for him here. It's probably his best chance. So now he takes, but if rook c3 here, I have queen e6 available. Okay, so he's bringing the rook over, defending that weak e-pawn. Let's invade. Rook d2. We're up a pawn. Simplifications are our friend. Let's give a check. I'm probably going to trade a pair of rooks, but I just want to do it on a square of my choosing. Here I could play queen c1 if I want. Yeah, let's do that. And he's unable to initiate the trade. At least I don't think he should. Rook takes d1, rook takes d1, check. Rook e1's not possible, I would just take it, so he'd have to play bishop f1, but then I have bishop b5 at the end of that line, ganging up on the bishop on f1. So this is unpleasant for him. Bishop f3, probably a good move. Trying to get me out of there. Okay, let's take now. Probably he'll take with a rook. His queen is guarding the second rank. Let's badger him with another trade. Queen d2. And then if rook e2, queen d4 is my plan. Now the queens are likely to come off the board too. So we have a 3-2 majority on the queen side. That's where our extra pawn lies. A plan I have is to swap the queens on f2, then play e5, so as to fix this pawn on a weak square. That's kind of my goal right now. If e5, I guess he can bring the king up. So maybe rook d3 first, just to be super accurate. Nah, I'm going to do this anyways. I still think this is good. Yep, he does bring the king up. Okay, so we're up a pawn. Once again, the motto of don't hurry applies. I'm in no rush to try to win this. I want to bring my king up, get that participating, but I also want to activate these pawns. So I'm looking at moves like c4 already. f5 is a good move to play at some point. Let's bring our king up and just await further developments. Make a good move. Maybe I can probe him with bishop a4, just see what his intentions are. Now that this bishop is no longer opposing his bishop on the diagonal, f5 is a serious possibility. So compared to that first game, here we have a same color bishop, and I like my winning chances here much better than that previous game. Here I'm going to go bishop b5, which is annoying for him because rook d3 is always hanging over his head. Okay, it looks like he's getting ready to play potentially a4. Let's play a5. He can play a4, but then he's fixed a lot of his pawns on the same color as his bishop. They might be targets for my bishop in the future. Plays h4. Yeah, and he has a hard time ever playing bishop e2, bear in mind, because I can take and then e4 is hanging. Now I think is the time for f5. So let's play that. Trading off this weak pawn, but I think this is the best way to try to make progress. But I only did that after bringing up my pieces a little bit. I might even prefer to centralize my king a little bit more before playing this move, but all told, I think it's a good time to do it. So we do get a trade. I'll probably bring my king up to f6, just to get that up a little bit more. Yeah, and that's a blunder because of rook e4 this time. Yeah, so we dropped the bishop. Would have been interesting to see how I would play for a win if he had not blundered that piece. But it's very tough for him. You can see he's pretty tied down. Like, swapping the bishops and trying to get to a rook ending, which might offer more drawing chances, is not possible. And he can't really move his rook from the third rank here because rook d3 check. He could play a4, but I'm just going to drop the bishop back to a6. So, yeah, so this was a bird variation, and I didn't try to play anything too fancy. d5 is an excellent response to the bird. It's just a reverse Dutch defense. And arguably, black should not play d4 this quickly because it does kind of encourage him to go and attack this pawn. But my concern was if I didn't play d4, he's going to play pawn e4. So say I had played knight c6, he can advance with e4 in the center. Because that's a pawn advance that white would love to achieve in this opening. You could see that that pawn on e2 was backward later, and he would love to just advance it before it becomes an issue. So what were things that I thought he could improve on? I was a little suspicious of e4. I'm not sure that's the right approach. I'm not sure about putting the knight on a4 at all, by the way. Although this does kind of happen in some Dutch positions. Comparing it to that opening. Maybe right around the time I played a6, he could have handled this better, because knight e4 just invited simplifications that benefited me. I would have been more concerned about moves that kept the tension and kept the pressure, especially on my bishop on b7. He's pinning me down with the knight and the bishop here. What moves would those be? Perhaps moves like queen f3, looking to pump out the pressure there. Actually, not sure that's the best one. I can play rook c8 in reply and just guard this. Maybe queen b3. Queen b3 though can be met by knight a5. So maybe it is a little tougher for him to find a move in this position after a6, just stopping knight b5. But I am almost positive there's something better than knight e4. Knight e4 seems to lead to favorable simplifications for me. So we traded. Yeah, and here I had a choice. I mean, we don't just want to take the pawn on b2 immediately without thinking about it. It could be a good move, but I saw some lines where, like, say after bishop takes b2, he takes on d6 and then plays rook b1, and if this bishop moves from b2, the pawn on b6 is weak. Possibly that was okay. Like, let's say take rook b1. Maybe I can play just trade on d1, take. Yeah, and he's not on the b file anymore. So I would be up a pawn in this case. He could also initiate the trade himself on d6. Actually, here, maybe I have to be careful, because if here, possibly e5 is playable, attacking the rook and opening the bishop. So with my time available, those lines looked not entirely clear. So instead, I opted to just move my queen. So after d takes e4, play queen e6, attacking this and this. The bishop and the queen are ganging up on e4. Queen is attacking c4 and attacking along the file. And I saw this plan of going bishop d4 and encouraging him to trade off the dark square bishops and getting this excellent d4 square and just trying to grind him down from here. I think he maybe should have inserted the move rook c3. Like, this would have been a good moment to do it after rook a d8, play rook c3, attack my queen, and I'd have to go to b5. Maybe he could play bishop f1 then. I have to go queen a5. I think my queen is not going to get trapped or anything, but actually that line's kind of interesting. Rook c3, queen here, bishop f1, queen a5, because he almost has b4. And if pawn takes, take here, but I guess I can play this move using the pin. So that might have been another moment where he had a better move. But yeah, as played, he swapped down into an endgame and ended up losing. Yeah, I think this move e5 is a nice one for black after we've swapped the queens. This fixes the weakness on e4, and my rook on d4 is dominant. If ever he challenges that rook, I might just leave it here. So, like, the game he played king e3, if ever he plays rook d2, I would perhaps not even initiate a trade with him. I might just leave it there and allow him to take me, but thereby give me a protected pass pawn. And from here, the big thing is patience. Just working our opponent over, not feeling a need to rush with our pawn moves. Black is ahead a pawn here. Probably I'm going to win based on that, but I don't need to rush it. Okay, we're playing a guy with a bunch of fours in his name, 1836. Let's play e4 this game. Get one game in with that. So e4, e5, we'll play knight f3. I'm going to go Roy Lopez if offered. And we'll make this our last game, too. He plays knight f6, the Berlin. I'm going to play d3 and just play it flexible. Castling is, of course, possible, but this way is a way to avoid the endgame. There's the famous Berlin endgame. Okay, a6. Are you blundering a pawn, Mr. 4? I'll just call you that. So bishop takes c6. If you take, I take e5. I got to watch out for tactics, but I control the c3 square, so I'm not sure there are any. Bishop takes c6, d takes c6, knight takes e5. Because, normally you have to watch out for bishop takes f2 or queen into d4, but I don't see it. So I'll take. And take. Queen e7, played instantly. Attacking my knight, but I can just retreat this knight. d4 would be a mistake, I think, because of knight takes e4, so I do want to play to retreat. So let's do that. Maybe he'll play aggressively and go bishop g4 and castle long. That's what I'm predicting. Looks like what he'll do. It's castle short. I still got my entire queen side I have to move out. Castling long, he does get pressure on d3. But all told, I like my position. I'm up a pawn. All right, so I want to develop, but I think playing rook e1 is quite helpful. So I'm going to start with that move. If I want to play d4 in the future, it is helpful to have the rook on the file there. I actually did not see that move, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, because now he's attacking along the d file. He's pinning me. So if I take with a rook, he's going to play queen takes. And he's ganging up on f2. So blunder by me. Knight takes e4. Unless I can punish this somehow, but I don't know. Bishop e3. Bishop e3 is just a normal move. It's not winning or anything. I could play d4, but d4 I'm not even threatening to take his bishop. Bishop e3, maybe bishop takes f3. And then, could he play rook takes d3? I have rook, queen f5 check after that. So that doesn't look quite right. Okay, let's do this move. So I made a mistake. I thought I was going to go the entire session without making any egregious blunder, but that has not happened. So just like we saw in the last video, when you make a mistake, what do you got to do? You got to try to recenter yourself. Don't react emotionally. Get your bearings again. Take some time. You know, I didn't immediately respond after knight takes e4. There are some opponents who will like try to play a quick response because they want to act like they actually saw the move that you had just played. But I don't think I have to explain why that's a bad strategy. Basically, just don't compound your error. Try to regain your balance, recenter yourself, and proceed as normal. Like now I just have to look at this as a position with equal material. It's a new game from here. It's not a game where I was up a pawn and I deserve to win because I was up a pawn. It's a completely new game. Probably one of the most overheard things that you hear in tournament halls for over-the-board chess is when someone feels they should have won a game, they'll stomp out of the tournament hall and they'll say something along the lines of, my opponent played so bad, he blundered, and I just deserved to win that. But I made a mistake, I did X, and I actually didn't win. You know, and you know, your blundering can negate your opponent's blundering. Just always bear that in mind. Chess is a two-way street like that. And you won't hear top players complain very much about blunders they make because they know that's part of the game. And they know that how you react to the blunder is just as important, if not more important, than the blunder itself, whether you or your opponent are making it. Okay, f5. So he is pretty pinned up along the e file. I mean, I can move my queen now, and I'd be threatening to take his knight. Like, say, queen e1. What's he going to do about it? I like queen e1 because that gets out of the pin simultaneously. So let's calculate a little line here. If queen e1, bishop takes f3, rook takes f3. I don't want to take with a pawn because that opens up my king. So queen e1, bishop takes f3, rook takes f3. He's still pinned along the file. And off the top of my head, I don't see how he's going to deal with that situation. So let's come here. Unless he comes up with something creative. Maybe he could do something like, I don't know, try to arrange f4, like let me take on e4, but after pawn takes, then push f4. But it looks like he's going to do it this way. So this is my plan. Trying to utilize the pin knight. You got to be careful about back rank stuff. Our sense of danger should be kicking in here because I have not completed my development yet. My knight is not out. I do think I'm in a good spot here to exploit the pin, but I'm not going to completely forget that I'm underdeveloped and my king's back rank is weak. So for instance, let's say I get a chance to play d takes e4 and he responds with queen takes e4. It looks great for us because we can trade queens, but bear in mind, queen takes e4, rook d1. Oops-a-daisy for white, we lose the game. All right, so queen over. So if I take and he does take with the queen, I should make a developing move like knight a3 perhaps. I think he's going to take with his pawn. So pawn takes and pawn takes, after which we're going to try to convert. But we'll find out. So take. So here I can play rook e3 or rook h3 and try to gain a tempo on his queen. Either one looks reasonable. Let's do rook e3 and just blockade that pawn. I'm not really afraid of his queen on h4. If he could play like rook d6, rook h6, and attack that pawn on h2, maybe I'd be concerned. But for the moment, I think I can deal with anything he throws at me. I haven't moved any of these pawns, which is really nice. Okay, so what's his threat after queen g4? He's threatening rook d1, pinning my queen to my king. I'm not going to take on e4. That would just backfire completely. He could play queen takes e4 or rook d1, actually. Let's play knight a3. Knight d2 also is good. Knight d2 is probably even better. Yeah, let's go knight d2. Gang up on the e4 pawn. Complete our development. And this rook assists in defending d1. And he resigned. So a mistake by my opponent in the opening. This might just be due to insufficient knowledge of this particular line. But he should not allow bishop takes c6. Because after knight takes e5, I don't think he has quite enough compensation. I did make a mistake, though. Right here, rook e1, I underestimated the knight takes e4 move. I have to play a bit more carefully here. Maybe queen e2 is necessary in order to escape the d-file. Maybe I should play it that way. Because rook e1, I ran into knight takes e4. Even if this happens to be good for white somehow, I would still consider my rook e1 move to be a blunder because I didn't see knight takes e4, and it's plausible for him. So I would categorize that as a blunder. But again, it's very important to proceed unemotionally, proceed objectively. Don't get flustered by the fact that you made a blunder. You're going to blunder many, many times throughout your chess career. And it doesn't stop just because you're climbing the rating ladder. It just becomes more seldom. But because it comes more seldom, you and your opponents are going to be blundering less. The reaction to those blunders will be a more visible part of your game. As opposed to like earlier when you were, at the lower rating levels, you're blundering left and right. It's just a normal part of it. Now blundering hopefully has become a little more rare, and you really need to manage the spots where you do blunder in order to fully exploit your chances, whether you're the offensive or the defensive side, the beneficiary of the blunder or the blunderer himself. Okay, I'm going to look for one more game and then call it a session here. We've had a couple games that were decided by big mistakes from the opponent. Again, like not uncommon. Just to touch on a point I mentioned earlier, I did say that I think players in the 1800 to 2000 rating level can calculate pretty well. Sometimes they calculate the wrong thing, though. This is one thing that maybe I should have mentioned at the beginning. So if you consider calculation in chess, the moves you look at when you look at a position, it's well known that the higher rated player, it's not that they calculate more than the lower rated players, it's that they know what to calculate. And they do a better job of filtering out lines that don't make sense to calculate. By and large, though, I've found some lower rated players who can calculate just as well as players 300 to 400 points higher than them. They can see tactics when they're there. They have tactics trainer ratings often online that are on par with very strong players, yet their ratings are still lower. Because often in games, they don't know what to calculate. They can't tame that calculation, so they spin their wheels looking at lines that stronger players might gloss over completely. Moreover, sometimes they have glaring weaknesses in other parts of their game. That's usually the case, which kind of counteracts any calculation. But as I've said earlier, my default strategy when facing players in this rating range, 1800 to 2000, is to try to avoid getting in a calculation war with them. I'll certainly take my opportunities should they arise. But I'm not trying to go to war over calculation. I'm trying to use my positional edge, my experience, my better knowledge of middle games, my better knowledge of end games, what end games I can go into. That's the bread and butter. And if you want to get beyond this rating level, you would do best to start studying things like that. Okay, so I'm playing Jake's a Beast, 1920. Is he going to make a move? Can't tell. This game might have got it boarded, actually. Yeah, I think it did. So I'm looking for just one more game to wind down this session. One other thing I want to add, at this rating level, if you don't have